Hey, everybody. Welcome to Autism Confidential, the podcast from the National Council on Severe Autism. I am Jill Escher. I'm president of NCSA, and I'm your host today. As you know, this year, it's 2024, our podcasts have been basically derivations of our pretty amazing webinar series. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you've basically been listening to our webinars. And the regular podcast has been pretty much on hold. But today we go back into regular old podcast mode because it is April. Drum roll, please, Tom McKean. And April is Autism Month, Autism Awareness Month, World Autism Month, Autism Action Month, Autism Acceptance Month, or I Hate You Autism Month, or whatever it is to you. So April is so special to us. So Tom and I thought that we would do a podcast just talking about April and what's going on this month and discussing various perspectives on this month. And we will, I'll read some excerpts from the media and we will discuss this. But first of all, most of you must remember my guest, Tom McKean. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Jill.
Tom is a treasured member of the autism community. He was in the advanced guard of autism advocacy dating back to, oh gosh, how long? The
92,
70s? What?
92,
92?
92.
I was
Yeah,
going to
the
say 70.
70s, I was a little
You were a
younger.
little young. Okay. So I was like, okay, so very early autism kind of activism and advocacy days. So he was on the board of Autism Society of America. He's written books about his own experience. He's also very active on social media. He has a big following of people who really adore him and love conversing with him about hot topics in the autism world. So tell people, before we start, where can they find you on social media?
Hot Topics is what we are going to discuss today, I understand. That comes later.
But what's your,
And
like,
where
if
they can
someone's
find me on
you're mostly
social
on
media,
Facebook,
they can
right?
find me here.
Oh, is he typing it into chat?
Uh, no, I'm typing it into this.
Okay.
See if that works. There I am.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
down
there
there
he
at
is.
the name.
Facebook, Thomas A. McKean, McKean.
Kean. Yes. Oh,
Okay, so
that's
I
right.
encourage
Some
you
of
to
this is
follow.
audio, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Facebook.com/Thomas A. McKean, all one word, McKean, if you're looking for it.
And so follow both NCSA and Tom McKean. So today, let's just jump into this, Tom. We'll talk about April. We'll talk about different perspectives about April. But I think I'm going to start off reading a little bit from, this is from Disability Scoop from April 3rd. The headline is White House. Oh, actually, I'm going to share my screen. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see what I'm talking about. Share screen. Here we go. There we are. White House embraces autism acceptance over awareness. In a month that's long been associated with autism awareness, the president, that would be Joseph Biden, is part of a growing shift towards emphasizing acceptance instead. For the first time, President Joe Biden issued a proclamation this week to designate World Autism Acceptance Day, which was held on Tuesday, which I think was April 2. In previous years, the date had been dubbed World Autism Awareness Day. And then there's this canned, kind of platitudinous quote. I call upon all Americans to learn more about autism, to improve early diagnosis, to learn more about the experiences of autistic people from autistic people, and to build more welcoming and inclusive communities to support people with autism. Funny, nothing about parents in there, or people who can't tell you about their autism. Anyway, the language shift comes at the urging of autism advocates, according to Kim Mushino, Vice President of Public Policy at the Autism Society of America. We made the switch in 2021, she said. I tried to get the president to switch in the proclamation for the past 2 years without success until this year. Well, as somebody who was president of Autism Society San Francisco Bay Area and is still on the board, I can't tell you how vehemently we opposed this move, as did many others in the Autism Society of America family. However, Autism Society of America chose to go along with this, I guess, without really consulting us anymore. Tom, your thoughts?
I detect a slight little note of bitterness in your reading there, if I may say. I do recall the ASA uh, trying to get the president to change it the past couple of years. I remember that. Uh, my thoughts, I've got kind of mixed feelings on this. I was definitely against it in the beginning. My thoughts on that have shifted. I'm not 100% completely in favor of it at this point, but I'm not as against it as I was. My thoughts on this have always been that acceptance will come with awareness. I have always believed, and that's kind of, in a way, the foundation of the work that I've done is looking for acceptance through awareness. I think that by creating awareness, we will create acceptance. And that I can't tell you when that's going to happen. It should have happened a long time ago. I think both of us can agree on that. But I do think that if you are looking to force people into acceptance early, that acceptance will be at best kind of not really genuine. I I would rather have actual, I don't want to say actual, authentic acceptance. I would rather have authentic acceptance than people, I don't know, pretending
What are we
acceptance, I
accepting though,
guess.
Tom? What do you mean? What are we accepting? What
Well,
does
now
this
that's a
mean to
good
you?
question, isn't it? I suppose that would mean something different to everybody, wouldn't it? Because as
Because like look
complicated
at
as
you,
autism is,
you're a self-advocate. You were diagnosed with autism as a child. You are somebody who functions, you have your issues, but you function pretty well. You're here talking to me. You're able to handle your own, technology. You understand these abstract concepts that, for example, my kids would never understand. Like I can understand how, acceptance of people like you is very important. I'm not going to deny that. But are we accepting autism? Are we accepting a severe neurodevelopmental disability that
well,
is disabling more children than ever?
it's not just people like me, it's your kids as well.
Right. Okay. But okay. So I guess what I want when I want to get it, like there's accepting our kids. Like, of course, when I take Johnny out, like my son who's 25 and very, very severely autistic, when I take him out, like for example, we were in a furniture store yesterday and people were looking at him funny. I want them to think, oh, there's a guy with autism. It's cool. He's wired differently. I don't want them to think, oh, kick him out of the store. He's a beast or he's an animal.
That's
I
a
want
textbook definition of acceptance right there.
okay. Okay. Well, I mean, that's good, but I don't want to accept, like, I don't accept cancer. I don't want to have like schizophrenia acceptance month. I don't want to have depression acceptance month. I don't want to have like traumatic brain injury acceptance month. I accept people who have those conditions, but I don't accept the condition. I feel we have to, on a moral, ethical, and pragmatic level, we have to fight those conditions, right? We have to combat those conditions because those conditions are objectively negative and they are damaging to quality of life and they are tremendous burdens on individuals on many levels. So that's where my difficulty is. Of course, I want my kids to be accepted. I want you to be accepted. I want all my friends with autism to be accepted. I don't want to trivialize the nature of their disorder.
That's interesting. Your perspective of this is completely different than mine, but that's because you're looking at it in a completely different way than I am. You're looking at it as the disorder itself, whereas I'm looking at it, and I think I'm just guessing about this. I can't say for sure, but I think that people, I don't really want to say most people, maybe a lot of people, maybe I could get away with that, would look at that and say not the condition, but the person that has the condition. In other words, the Autism Acceptance Month would not be, okay, I am accepting autism like I would accept the schizophrenia or the traumatic brain injury, but rather I am accepting this individual who has been diagnosed with autism. And if you, and looking at it
Hmm.
from those two perspectives, you've got two completely different things going on.
Okay. Well, let me go and read a little bit more from this article. All right. So here the journalist is quoting. While of course we want people to know about autism, the term awareness can have negative connotations, implying that the thing we should be aware of is something to be scared of or panicked about, said Zoe Gross, Director of Advocacy at the Autistic Self Advocacy Network. By contrast, autism acceptance is about creating a society that accommodates and includes autistic people in all aspects of life. Okay, I would agree with her that we do want to create a society that accommodates our kids, no question. Um, However, I would also contend that autism is something to be scared of, and autism is something to be panicked about. Maybe not in the case of the highest functioning people, but in the case of people like my kids who have IQs in the 30s, who can't talk, who can't read, who can't write, who can't take care of themselves, who can't attend to their basic needs, who have basically no daily living skills, who will be completely dependent on other people 24/7 for the rest of their lives, who will cost us and the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars each year, who will need a variety of trained staff around them at all times, who are super vulnerable to all forms of abuse and neglect. Yes, autism is something to be scared of and panicked about, and the rising rates of it should be panicking us. And what concerns me, Tom, is that now that the federal government, because of the swipe of a pen by Joe Biden, all of its messaging in April is about acceptance. And it's not about addressing these very serious issues. It's not about addressing what's freaking causing this autism. How are we going to treat autism? How are we going to deal, right, with this rising tide of mental disability? Instead, we're just supposed to be like, oh, it's like we are in the magic land. We have moved into the magic land of acceptance, and that makes everything better. I am against it. Your
I
thoughts?
I can hear your audience cheering you on. Knowing who your audience is, I could just picture them jumping out of their chair, waving their prayer cloth in the air. Preach it, Jill, preach it. Setting aside the obvious question of where do we get all the money to do this, research and development, and wondering where it comes from, setting all that aside, um, and this is something that has been on my mind recently, and it's probably going to apply to all four of these things we're going to look at if we get to all of them. And lately I'm my thoughts are shifting towards a lot of things in the autism community, and that does include the actually autistic. My rage at them is going down just a little bit. I don't think they're entirely to blame, and I don't think this person at the Autism Self Advocacy Network is entirely to blame. I don't think the ASA is entirely to blame. I don't think Biden is entirely to blame. The problem, all of that is a problem, okay? I'm not saying they're entirely blameless. The problem is the current definition of autism as it is now is absolutely unsustainable. because it's become so broad that we don't even really know what it is anymore. If you've got people like your kids that you were talking about, and then the people like me that you were talking about, we live in completely different worlds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we were
Right.
talking about just before the podcast, right? Yes, I'm here. I clicked on the button and I came into your Zoom room by myself, and I set all of this up, and I put the bear there and everything, and I'm talking to you, and there's nobody here with me. I'm here by myself, but I'm also living in my sister's basement.
Mm-hmm.
But in your case, it's different because I can live in my sister's basement and I can be here by myself. And if I want to, I can walk up the steps and I can grab my keys and I can go out to my car and I can turn it on and I can drive to wherever I want. I've got a passport. I'm at liberty to leave the country if I want to. Your kids can't do that. They're in a completely different situation. They're the ones that you just said are going to require the 24/7 support for the rest of their lives, and they can't live in somebody's basement. They can't be here on their own. They can't get up and drive the car. They can't click on the button and talk to someone on Zoom. And yet, both of us are said to be exactly the same under the definition of autism as it is now.
Yeah. I think you've perfectly stated the absurdity of it. And I think you're right. I mean, there's so many things that are broken in autism because the very definition is broken. And
Yes.
you well stated, Tom. I'm going to move on because there's so much we want to cover. But one thing I did want to say about this whole autism acceptance thing is that it has just now infiltrated the federal government. And so the messaging we get from federal agencies is about autism acceptance. So here, for example, is something from the CDC. April is Autism Acceptance Month. Join us as we raise awareness to promote autism acceptance, celebrate neurodiversity and individual differences, and continue to advance inclusivity and connectedness throughout the community. It's time to renew our commitment to honor the unique lived experiences of people with autism. Working together, we can support young families as well as children and youth with autism as they transition to adulthood, helping each individual reach their full potential. Oh, thank you for the platitudes. But yes, the CDC, we taxpayers put money into the CDC and into the NIH because we care about this rising tide of serious mental disorders, serious mental disability. We are not giving money to them to celebrate our children's disabilities, right? These are
The,
supposed to be serious organizations attacking serious public health issues. And instead, it's like our money is going into blah, 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 individual differences. No, this is not what we need. This is not what the country needs. The country needs serious work on understanding what WTF is happening and why 3% of all kids have abnormal neurodevelopment that rises to the level of autism. Anyway, I'm not going to rant anymore because we should go
yes,
on.
this little blurb that you read is talking about the quirky people like me, and your kids are being left behind.
You're reaching your full potential. I mean, come on. And then here it says partner with us. And here are all the hashtags: Autism Acceptance Month, neurodiversity. My kids don't have neurodiversity. They have serious mental disorder, serious neurodevelopmental disorder. Their brains were formed improperly and abnormally. We should be calling it what it is. These are supposed to be scientific organizations, and now all they're doing is using like romanticizing language that kind of normalizes patent disability.
Have they done like MRI scans on the brains and found abnormalities in your kids?
Oh, in my kids. No, it's very hard to use MRIs actually to detect the microstructural abnormalities of autism. I'm saying generally, neuroscience, the realm of neuroscience has found pretty emphatically that autism is a result of abnormal brain development. It's not the result of like, oh, a benign difference. These are structural defects that create abnormal circuits that impair thinking and learning. That's what we should be talking about in April, not, like, oh, we need to inclusivity and connectedness. I mean, that's fine, but we don't need the CDC to be telling us that. Anyway,
I,
okay.
I think you're right. I love the idea of getting technical about it in April. I think that's a wonderful thing to
Yeah, why
do.
don't we really talk about what autism really is? And let's really talk about level 2 autism, level 3 autism, and not just level 1 autism, which includes you. Like, let's talk about these guys who sit at their computers all day and have no friends and can't get a job and can't hold a conversation and have high anxiety and have depression and have suicidal ideation. And let's talk about those level 2s, and let's talk about, the level 3s who, are incontinent and who need to have help with every single thing every moment of their day, and who elope into the street and who take off their clothes in public and who, like my daughter, eat inedible objects and end up in the ER. Let's talk about the level 3s who are locked in emergency rooms because there's nowhere for them to go because no one knows how to treat their very prolific, very intense, multifaceted disabilities. Let's talk about, the level 3s who, like, basically will not advance past an 18th month old level of functioning their entire lives. Oh my God. Okay.
I remember that. I remember that bit about the emergency room. I remember that.
What? Well, it's a growing problem. You don't see
Yeah.
that talked about in April, but okay, that's a perfect transition to the next article. So this one is from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. So we're actually shifting gears because there are dissenting voices in the media. And of course, actually, I did write an op-ed, but it didn't get accepted at the New York Times or Washington Post, so I don't have it to share with you. But anyway, Pittsburgh Post Gazette, Rose Bauman, misunderstanding autism. It's not just a different way of being. So here she is, she's coming to us from Pennsylvania, Rose. As we leave behind the capricious days of March for the hope of true spring in April, members of the autism community prepare to commemorate Autism Awareness/Acceptance Month. Like many Awareness Month, April has been officially recognized by state and national leaders as a time to acknowledge a disorder and a population that has been historically misunderstood, mistreated, and misrepresented. Unfortunately, there's a movement afoot within the autism community that might abolish the need for Autism Awareness Acceptance Month altogether. The growing population of neurodiversity advocates seem to be mainly autistic self-advocates with low support needs, plus scores of self-identified autistics, many of whom get their diagnostic authority from TikTok videos or you might be autistic if quizzes online. If they continue to tell the world that autism is not a disorder, the official keepers of the World Awareness Calendar, I love that, the World Awareness Calendar, can reassign the month of April to another cause. So Rose's point is, like, if we're really normalizing autism and it's just about, like, differences, why do we even need awareness? Why do we even need
It's
acceptance?
not
Because
just
it's
that, is
not
it?
a disability.
It's worse than that. If they normalize autism, then all of the funding, all of the resources, everything else will go to people who need it because people with autism don't, because it's not a disability, it's just a different way of being.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with them. So we could take all that money, all those resources that we've been giving them, and we could take it away from them and give them to someone else.
Yep. Yep. People who actually who are dependent and who really can't care for themselves because they're not just different, right? But of course, there are few disabilities as intense, as I don't even know the word, as magnificently disabling as autism, as level 3 autism, right? And that's what's so weird and so bizarre. It's like you're taking
Magnificently
disabling.
disabling.
I don't even know the word. I was trying to think gargantuanly, mammothly. My
Magnificently,
mental thesaurus was not coming up with the words, but
yeah,
I feel like,
magnificently disabling does get the point across.
I mean,
It
it
was well
is
chosen.
few people on this planet are as disabled as my kids. Yet we are supposed to believe that, it's a different way of being, a different way of thinking. Like how completely like undermining of reality can one be?
Okay,
You
well, I
know,
can answer that. Okay,
what?
and one, it goes back to the diagnosis being broken,
Being broken. So it goes back to,
which
yeah, let's go
it
back to
goes
square
back
one.
to the diagnosis being broken, which we talked about before. And something else that I have been thinking about the past couple of weeks is the progression over the last 30 years. Because back in the 90s when I started, that's what autism was your kids. And it was thought that 70% or more had some form
Hmm.
of what would be the
Intellectual
current political?
disability.
Yeah, I was going to say cognitive impairment, but
Yeah.
intellectual disability works.
Hmm.
We can't say the MR word anymore that we did back then, but it was thought that 70% of them fell into that cat. Now it's what 29? What is it? 29.7, I think, or something like that.
Okay, so, well, actually, so you raised the question of what's profound autism. Profound autism is a pretty narrow definition. It's IQ under 50, or non or minimally verbal, and in need of 24/7 care, or supervision. So it's a very, very narrow definition. It's narrower than autism with intellectual disability, which includes a larger group. But to that point, let me continue reading the great Rose Bauman of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Oh, pray
Okay.
continue.
So she says, as a parent of a profoundly autistic young adult son, I beg to differ. No other descriptor besides, quote, profound is sufficient to describe the things my son struggles with on a regular basis. Self-injurious behavior that is so pervasive he wears a protective helmet 24/7 to prevent brain trauma and facial fractures. Spikes in aggression that can come out of nowhere, causing property damage and injury to those in his path. Anxiety that can trigger incidents of elopement from the home or worse, a moving vehicle, and communication difficulties that prevent him from telling anyone when he hurts, what he fears, or who may have harmed him, an occurrence that is far too common amongst individuals with profound autism. So, great paragraph, Rose, gets to my point. There is nothing to celebrate or accept here. Nothing. This is
Uh,
pure, unadulterated, nightmarish disability. And our focus as a community and as a scientific community, if you're talking for the CDC and NIH, should be on figuring what the hell happened to Rose's son. Why did this happen? How can we prevent it? How can we treat it? How can we make it better? That has to be our number one goal.
Okay, I have that 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 paragraph
Excuse
is
me.
very well written, and is the work that I have done over the years. I have seen all of that. I have seen the helmets. I have seen the head banging. I have seen the elopement. I have seen the trying to get out from a moving vehicle, and I have seen. I can't tell you where I heard or who did what to me. I can picture it in my head, all of it, because I have seen all of that. And you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. None of that is anything to celebrate. I want to go back to what I was talking about before. I watched all of this happen over the past 30 years from deep within the autism community. I had like this front row seat to see this shift. And even with that, I don't really understand how it happened. The conferences, back when there were conferences, used to focus on the more severe, and autism was a more severe. But now it's all Temple and the good doctor. And and people now, when they hear the word autism, that's what they think of. They think of the quirkiness. They don't think of the kids in the institutions, rocking in a corner like they used to. because that's not the definition of autism now in 2024 like it was in 1994. Now it's now it's the geniuses that kind of look at things a little differently and a little sideways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So
how did
like,
that happen?
yeah, how did that happen? How come Rose's son isn't featured in Autism Acceptance Month? Right? Why wasn't he part of Autism Society's proclamation with Joe Biden? Like,
I can answer that
why?
too.
Hmm?
I can answer that too. That one's easy. That one's easy. The reason that he wasn't a part of it is because people, they kind of want to avoid that thing.
I want to avoid that thing.
I
Oh,
think
it's
it
not so
might I think it
mediagenic to
might
see a guy bashing his head in.
no, it's not. And I think it might hurt a little too much because we know those
Mhm.
problems are there. We know her son is there. We know your kids are there. But we also know, at least right now, that there's nothing we can do about it. I
Well,
there might be a couple of things I could do for your kids, but nothing that I'm sure you can't. But there's yeah, we can't fix the problems.
mhm.
And there are
um,
people who would tell you that what they are experiencing is not a problem, which I completely disagree with.
let's cruise. Yeah, I mean, listen, my point is our president of the United States signed a proclamation around autism acceptance. And it's a proclamation that very much ignores these realities and diminishes them and throws them under the bus, in
He
my
meant
view.
well,
So, well, he doesn't know. He's just doing what his advisors, he doesn't mean well. His advisors, who are all, disability rights, progressive people, just told him to do
right?
this. And so he
Well,
did it.
I'm saying I don't think it was
Yeah,
malicious on his part.
I'm sure he has other things to think about, like, wars in the Middle East.
Right,
And that this was
right.
like, okay, whatever, he doesn't have a lot of mental faculty left, and what little was left,
Let me sign this so I can
let me
get on the
sign
phone
this.
with
So
Netanyahu.
yeah. I'm sure that this was like the least of his world priorities. Um, okay, I'm gonna close with Rose. Rose also talks about a friend of hers. Um, um, and her friend lives in a rural community where there are no services, and there are no services because of her son's severe behaviors. He has his son, she's unable to cook when he's awake because he can't tolerate a lit stove. The windows in the home are covered with plexiglass to protect the windows, to protect her son from his head butting. Like, okay, I would like to see that on, the ASA public service announcements. Okay, and then she says words matter.
That,
And when we don't use them accurately, sorry, I'll get back to a sec. Use them accurately to describe the clinical symptoms of a disorder that is as inherently debilitating and life limiting as profound autism, we take political correctness to a dangerous and irresponsible level. Hurrah! Yay for Rose. Good job on this piece.
okay, you're not going to see the plexiglass. You're not going to see. I thought we were going to do that one last. I thought we had one more to do
Oh,
before
we
we
have
had
one more
that.
to
Before we,
do. Yeah. So we,
are we doing this one? Okay.
yeah,
So
let's do this
you're
one.
not going to see that. You're not going to see the plexiglass and the headbutting on the awareness things because it's too real.
I know it's too real, but this is reality, right? We
Yes.
have a responsibility to address reality. When we talk about war, we don't pretty it up. We talk about the people who die and who are traumatized and who have amputations and who lost loved ones and who's, whatever. That's reality. I mean, with autism, we should talk about reality.
Okay.
When we talk about
I
cancer, we don't talk about like, oh, but you get a new way of thinking about life. Like, no, you talk about wanting to kill these out of control dividing cells because that's the
It,
reality, because cancer brings with it pain, agony, and death.
right,
Um,
right. And I do want to go off on a rant about what's happening in the Middle East. I will refrain because that's not our topic.
oh
Um,
yeah, we'll try not
I
to go on that tangent.
right, right. And my guess is whatever I was going to say is not what people think. It was something else. Um, as far as this goes, I absolutely, totally 100% agree with you that if we are going to talk about autism acceptance and autism awareness, we absolutely need to include the more profound in that. And I also agree with you that is not happening. And I agree with you that the kids are kind of being ignored and left behind, and nobody, nobody really wants to look. I don't, maybe they don't know how. Maybe they don't know how to deal with it. What do you do when you see something like that? When you're on the outside and you have never seen anything like that before, and it just kind of comes at you,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a bit of a slap in the face, which, given that this is some kind of awareness or acceptance month, might not really be a bad idea. That really kind of should be what it's about. When we did this, and guys, for you listening, I was there when we made this awareness acceptance action month, whatever it is. I had input and a vote on it, and I used both. We were looking at this. Of course, this was years ago. We were looking at this as a form not of as acceptance, but of awareness. And the goal that we had with that was not to increase acceptance, but to increase awareness. Back then in the 90s, we were cognizant enough to know that awareness or acceptance might be somewhere out on the horizon, but we weren't there yet. And that what we needed to do to get that acceptance was to create more awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So we picked April because it started with A, like autism, and we picked April instead of August because April is kind of the springtime and it's new beginnings, and it's a better time for conferences, events, and fundraisers and things that you would do to create not acceptance but awareness. I am all in favor of autism acceptance in the sense of individuals with autism, be they me or your kids, being accepted. I am I am all in favor of that. However, I am also in agreement with you with what you said earlier, that I am not sure autism itself should be accepted. I
We
think there's a I
agree.
think I yeah I think there's a possibility that that, as you were saying, the very highest functioning among us maybe, but the level twos and the level threes, I think we need to work on that. I think we need to put more focus on that. We need to put more money and funding and research into that. And I know that there's people who are against research. I don't agree with that. I am all 100% in favor of autism research,
Mm-hmm.
completely.
Yes,
And acceptance would imply, wouldn't it, that the research is no longer needed
it would.
because
It
it's
would,
accepted.
because it's just a different way of being, just a different
Right,
condition. It's a different mind, different way of seeing. Well, you don't have to treat that, right? You don't
right.
need research about that. You don't need to know the cause of that.
Which
But
leaves you on your own.
yeah, I'm a semi fan of research. I'm a fan of some research. I do want to say I honestly think 90% of autism research dollars are wasted, which would be a topic for another podcast. Okay, here we
Let's
go.
do that one. That would
Last
be
but not
fun.
least, this is a good one. Again, telling the
Yes.
contrary point of view from Newsweek. I love my child. I hate his autism. Oh my gosh, I'm with you 100%. This is by Beth Ruggiero Bell. She says, I'm a 42-year-old mother of two boys, the youngest of whom is autistic. It's been 8 years since his diagnosis, and I have never, at this point, likely will never, believed the cliche that autism has been a blessing or gift in our lives. Hallelujah. Autism, I love my kids to death. I telling you, I could not possibly be closer to human being than I'm particularly with my daughter Sophie, who's just about to turn 18. We are joined at the hip. We do everything together. She's the most special person in my life. I adore her. It's not that I don't love my son. I love him too, but he's so severe that I can't like go out with him except for our daily Jamba Juice runs. And like my love for Sophie is it's unquantifiably huge. It's just it's all of me is in love with all of her, to quote a pop song. And I I would do anything to get rid of her autism, right? Because she is 24/7 dependent on me or other people. She will never talk, read, or write. She'll never be able to take care of herself. She'll never operate, mentally at more than like a 2-year-old level, even though, she's very competent at certain things like skiing. And she is the most delightful, has the greatest personality, but she would be delightful and have a great personality without autism, right? She would be a love monster, a wonderful person without autism. She doesn't need the autism to make her special. And, it just, obviously something happened in her brain during brain development. Her brain development went awry. She's miswired, and therefore she can't process information in a normal way. And this has resulted in severe mental incapacity and lifelong dependency. There's nothing to celebrate about that. But let's go back to Ms. Ruggiero Bell. She says, um, sorry. Um, we are not supposed to talk about how hard it is watching your child be different in a world that fears differences, how venturing out into public can be as frightening for you as it is for your child. We're not supposed to say how sad it is to admit he will realistically never catch up to his peers, live alone, or raise a family, or how lonely we as autism parents sometimes are. Instead, we are supposed to, quote, embrace the journey. We're supposed to, quote, find the joy. We're supposed to appreciate that, quote, God only gives these children to those who can handle it. Hallelujah, Beth. Here she is. There's a
That
picture of Beth.
that
There's her son.
that part is not true. I have seen parents who cannot handle it.
Oh, completely true. Yes, exactly. No, I love these cliches. And she said it's completely ridiculous. I've seen parents go into complete financial and mental and relationship and physical meltdown because of their
Yes.
children's autism.
Yes.
Let's be 100% clear about that. I've seen lives completely ruined by their children's autism. Nothing pretty about it. These parents lose their jobs, and on top of it, they have massive expenses. House, they're repairing their house constantly. They're employing therapists constantly. They're employing like babysitters constantly. They're living basically on like welfare, and taking
It's
care, doing an impossible job to take care of someone with severe.
it's more than that, isn't it? It's more than that. Feta, he
Oh,
could have gotten
yes,
out of the
thank you,
house.
Tom.
He
And
could
you can be like
have.
Feta and lose your effing life and your
Yes.
son's effing life because your son's so autistic he won't fucking walk down 14 fucking stairs to get out of their fucking burning house. I mean, unbelievable. Unfucking believable how horrific, this disorder can be. So, yes, okay. Bless you, Feta in heaven. We love you. Um, so anyway, so she goes on in Newsweek about how this the reality of autism differs so much from how it's often portrayed in the media and the cliches that we hear. Um anyway, I don't know. Do we have time to go over it?
How
Okay,
did how do you
and
think that happened? How do you think that whole media thing happened?
Oh,
There are
I know
people
how it
who are,
happened. I've talked to editors of newspapers and I've
was it the
talked to people.
Temple movie?
No, I don't know if there was like a specific turning point. It's a good question. Um, but you know what, I've talked to editors of newspapers. I've talked to, people in like TV news who've come to me and say, "Hey, we're really interested in some stories. You, we pitch us some stories." And I'll pitch them difficult, challenging stories, and they'll say no. We want to run things that are uplifting and that are affirming, life affirming, and yada yada. They don't want these stories. I'm like,
Well,
I'm
you can't
telling you,
really
I've
blame
talked to
them
these
for
people
that.
over the years. Tom, I do
Yes,
not
but
exaggerate.
look what's happening. These parents are coming home from work. They've been busy all day. Their boss has been yelling at them. Yeah, they want to sit down in front of the TV and see something a little more affirming.
Nice,
They're right
yeah.
about
They
that.
don't want to do anything controversial. And they also like,
Right,
the
right.
self-advocacy, neurodiversity, actually autistic lobby, has been so good at their constant backlash against bad news stories that, these people are like, I don't want to deal with that BS. I'm not going to run anything that's going to engender that kind of firestorm.
I have been so impressed with how well organized those guys are. If they would get it together, they could completely change the world with autism for the better. And they could do it in such a short period of time. And the fact that they are more focused on the rage than doing that is, to me, the greatest loss this community has ever experienced.
Yeah, well
Because
said.
if those guys were on the ball, if they were thinking like real advocates, things would be completely different for you, me, and your kids right now, and in a good way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They have so much potential to do so much good, but they're very much more in their focus is on attacking and tearing down and defunding and disrupting. They are not productive. They're not like, oh, we see an alternative that will actually work, right, for these level threes. No, they don't do that. They're just about removing, um, prohibiting, um, getting things, defunded, and not about actually building things that are sensible, workable,
Right.
and
And
useful.
autism, right.
Yeah,
Advocacy is not about tearing things down. It's about lifting up. It's about
lifting up.
building up. It's about creating good and not yelling and screaming and arguing and disrupting.
Right.
Advocacy is about it's about positivity. And to
Yeah.
some extent, I guess that would apply even to your kids in the sense of, well, okay, let's do something about it. That would be
Hmm.
like if you wanted to get down to the essence, the core of what advocacy would be in that situation. It would
Hmm.
be, Jill, here's a problem, let's do something
Let's,
about it, which
yeah,
would be a
right,
positive thing,
right.
right? But
Hmm.
it's kind of not like about that with them. It's like, okay, well, let me argue with you about that just because I want to.
Yeah. No,
Right.
thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. I agree with you. I'm going to close this with just one more line, one more short paragraph from Beth here in Newsweek. I will forever torment myself by wondering what life for him and us might have looked like. As with all grief, I will still cry in anger or sadness at unexpected times about the loss of I'm sorry, we'd thought we'd have, that we planned so carefully for. I will always wish I could take his autism away. And you know what? I will always wish I could take my kids' autism away. I would do it in 2 seconds if there was a magic pill. Um, it would make their lives infinitely better, infinitely deeper, infinitely greater. It would be greater for broader family, greater for the broader community, greater for the taxpayers. It would be greater on every single possible level. So anyway, with that, I will say emphatically, I do not accept autism, and but I accept people with autism. And I want to thank Tom for his insightful, as always, commentary and for returning to our podcast as our favorite guest.
And thank you for those delightful to listen to rants, which kept me from having to say anything. And do you do that? Do you wonder what life would be like for Sophie?
Oh, yeah, sure, of course.
I
I
mean,
think
do
every
you?
parent, doesn't every parent wonder? Yeah, like, Sophie is such a really wonderful personality, so cute, and she's so athletic. She's so much fun. She loves other people. I just think she would have such a wonderfully joyous and productive life. And now, with her severe autism, severe and profound autism, her life is very, very small. You know, there's so little that she can actually do. I mean, y- I should have her as a guest on the podcast, and you could see how little she can actually accomplish, because her brain circuits aren't functioning, and so there's little information that she can process, and there's little that she can learn, and there's little that she can productively do. Um, she can't even figure out how to adjust the volume on her beloved iPhone. Like, something that simple. It's way beyond her. I mean, she's recently kind of learned how to put on a shirt, sort of, although it usually ends up inside out and backwards. And she's almost 18, right? I mean, we're talking a level of disability that's unfathomable to most people. I would do away with it in a second. Okay, we're past our time, Tom. Thank you so, so much.
Oh well,
And I'm sorry we didn't play
thank you
guitar
for
together
having
this
me.
time. We'll play guitar next
Yes.
time.
Oh, really? That was because mine is sitting like, okay, you
I
guys
know,
see me
mine's right
pointing if
there.
you're watching, and you see her pointing in the same direction I
Mine's right
am. Our
there. Yeah.
guitars are right off to
Yeah.
the side, but
Yeah.
apparently we will not be playing them this time around.
No. You know what song I just learned, which I think is a Tom McKean like song, is the song Amy. Amy, what you gonna do? I think. Do you know that one?
Yeah,
Uh,
I've been meaning to learn that.
Okay, I think it's a very Tom McKean song. I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me in the key that you learned it in. Maybe we can play it next time.
All right. I think
You
it was
know, now
A.
it's come to what you want. You've had your way.
Oh, that's it.
Yep,
See, I knew you knew that song. A
of
great
course I
song from the
do.
70s. Okay. Well, maybe we'll play that next time.
That'd be fun.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Adios, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. We'll be back next time with a webinar with Dr. Shaji Hawk about behavioral
Okay,
treatment.
let me give you some parting comments
Oh,
before we go.
okay.
And I've probably said this in the past because it's the National Council on Severe Autism. But let me just, before you go real quick, give you some parting comments about all of this. What you were just saying, I don't know, a moment ago about Sophie and what you think her life would have been like. I've heard that from from other parents, and I've heard, a lot of them have talked to me about this. They've kind of taken me off to the side, and they've told me that they wonder what would my child's life have been like. And these are the parents of the more severe that we're talking about here, the ones at the
Hmm.
conferences. What would my child's life have been like? And they tell me the same thing you do, that they're wonderful kids and they've got these great personalities and that they're outgoing and that they think that they just could have sailed and gone far and had a wonderfully happy kind of life like you were talking about. And they kind of, like you were doing, um, I don't know if lament is the right word. I don't think it's strong enough. How about mourn? Mourn the loss of that. Mourn the
Hmm.
loss of that not being the case. And they also something every single one of them I think has said to me is that all of them are so worried what's going to happen with my
Happen.
child after I'm
Oh
gone.
my God. Oh my God.
And
That is
I
the
was,
question. Yeah.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And
I'm writing a book.
it's
Did I tell you I'm writing a book, Tom? Guess what the title is?
what will happen to my child after I am
God.
gone.
Close. It's
That,
Autism Parents Cannot Die.
right. And that's exactly what a lot of them say to me, that
It's
same
true.
thing. And and look, if any of you parents back then are listening, any of you who were talking to me back then, if I'm talking about you, let me just say thank you for that. Parents, I don't know what it was about me specifically. The four of us originals, we were all given nicknames. Temple was the smart one, Donna was the brave one, Sean was the kind one, and I was the playful one.
Hmm.
And parents, for whatever reason, came to me and they trusted me and they believed in me much more than I did in myself. And they were pretty personal, they were pretty intimate, and they shared things with me that they didn't share with others. I was just telling someone about this earlier today. Things like, what would my child's life have been without this? What is going to happen to my child after I am gone? And they tell me things that happen, in utero and during birth and things like this. And they tell me, they told me what it's like to be a parent of a child with severe or profound autism. And enough of them have told me over the years, I think I really kind of get it.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who are out there, and there are people out there, I think you and I have talked about this on a previous podcast. There are people out there who are saying, you know what, don't even watch them, don't even supervise them, just let them go on their way and do whatever they want. Yes, I've attended the funerals of the kids that have run into the street because parents weren't doing that, right? But they have not experienced that. They have not had the parents sit down and tell them, this is what it's like in my life, this is what it's like in my child's life, this
Hmm.
is what happens in our family, this is life for our family day to day. Come into my home, Thomas, stay here for a day, a week, a month. Let me show you, let you into this
Mm-hmm.
so you can see it. all of that
Mm-hmm.
all of
Mm-hmm.
that is what made me good at what I did. And so, parents, if you're
Yeah.
listening,
Yeah.
thank you for doing that for me. Thank you for making me a better advocate. Thank you for letting me see the other side of this, the side that I am not on, the parent side. And it's because of that. It's because of that, looking at whatever the issue was from both of those perspectives, from the parent side and the child side. That's how I was able to find the answers and the solutions for them.
Well, thank you. Thank you for keeping your eyes open because we need people like you who see the world. And yeah, I've always had a standing offer to advocates who doubt the reality of severe autism, to come take care of my son for a month and then come back and tell me there's no such thing as severe autism.
A
So far, no one's
month,
taken me
they
up on that
wouldn't last.
offer.
What do you think
They
they'd
wouldn't
last
last
an
a day.
hour?
Yeah, an hour. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah. But yeah, that's a big problem. Anyway, we have to go. But Tom, thank you so much and for your parting words, and we will meet again. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye, guys.
Adios. Bye, Tom.